Hello, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and welcome to the PDF and image parsing training. In this episode, I'm going to show you how you can automatically take pictures of any types of receipt, parse the data inside the receipt, including date, total, receipt number, and a host more, automatically have that data come into Excel and present it in a beautiful format with nothing more than just a little bit of code and some automation. It's going to be an incredible training. I cannot wait. So let's get started. All right, thanks so much for joining me today. I've got an incredible training for you. One of the best. I'm super excited. In this training, I'm going to show you how you can take a picture of a receipt or simply drag a receipt into a folder and automatically have the data in that receipt, including the total, including the amounts, including the receipt number, and anything else you want automatically come into Excel without keying one single word or one single character yourself. It's going to be an incredible training. I'm going to have that data automatically into that, and we're going to be able to display receipts just like you're seeing here. Those receipts can be pictures. They can even be PDFs. We're going to show you how to do that too, and a whole lot more. So we've got a lot to cover. I'm going to go step by step through it. By the completion of this training, you're going to know how to parse your own data, regardless of it is, how to automatically get that data into Excel without doing anything. It's going to be a great training, but I want to make sure that you're here throughout the entire training. The best way to get these trainings and get notified is to make sure that you do subscribe. Click on that notification icon bell. I create these trainings each and every Tuesday just for you here, so I hope you will join us. There's some great ways to enjoy Excel. These trainings are free. All you need to do is click the link down below. You can download this workbook with either your email or Facebook Messenger. I go way beyond these trainings. If you like, you want to see what else we have in store every week, what I'll do is I'll take these trainings and I'll take your suggestions and I'll add on a feature, or maybe I'll focus on a specific part, or maybe I'll fix a bug. It's all up to you. And then I'll create a brand new training, a brand new workbook, and I'm going to throw all that inside our Patreon account. It starts with just a few dollars a month, and there's different levels on whatever features you might want, including beautiful PDF codebook to allow you to download and see all the list of the code. That's inside our Patreon account. I'll include the link down below. I hope you'll join us inside Patreon. That keeps these trainings absolutely free for you every week. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so what do I want to do? Well, basically, you might have a receipt laying around. You might have them in a folder. You might want to take pictures of receipts. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to type in the name. We don't want to type in the date and expense. We want all of that automated. We don't want to do anything. We're really lazy, at least I am, and I want to make things easy, and I want everything tracked. So when I take pictures of these receipts, I want them to come in Excel. I don't want to do anything. All I want to do is just drag it in a folder. This training, all you're going to be able to have to do is drag a simple picture inside a folder. Once that happens, everything else is set to automation. We'll run a macro and we'll automatically be able to change dates, and we'll have that data appear here based on the date. It's going to be really simple. We've got so much to cover. So we're going to get started right away on this. I'll go over this is a very, very simple workbook. You can apply this. I'm applying it to an automated expense tracking, but you can apply this to almost any kind of tracking. So what we're going to do is we're going to parse data. And inside PDFs or inside receipts, we want to extract certain data, and we're going to use software to extract it for us, and it's going to be done absolutely automatically, and it's going to come into our computer automatically. So a lot of automation in this, but it's not a lot of code. Even if you're beginning on code, we're going to go step by step. It's just a little bit of code. The magic happens in some third-party applications, which we're going to go over. Okay, so just a little bit of information about this workbook and what we got going on. We only have three main folders. I've got an expense data folder. This is where all of our data is going to go. So basically, we want a folder like this. Best thing to do is set up a Dropbox account. I've got my Dropbox account. Dropbox is free, up to 2 gigabytes, and you're probably not going to use that Dropbox. If you don't have it yet, it's also available, of course, as an app on your phone, whether you're for Android or Apple phone or whatever you want, or on your computer. So I've got that here. I've got a Dropbox account. And Dropbox, of course, everything we put in that folder gets backed up online, so it syncs all of our devices. Very cool. So basically what I want to do is I want to create a folder for every single vendor. I've got 3 of them. I've got one for Home Depot, which in America is basically a home improvement store where you can buy a lot of stuff for your home. Rent, if you're paying rent or something, you want to put the receipts in here. And utilities. So for each one of those bills, I've got a separate folder. Now the idea is simple. All I want to do is to be able to drag one of these inside the folder, or from your phone, take a picture and put it in this folder. Remember, you've got this on your phone. As you can see here, you can also have this on your phone. Okay, so basically once I drag this in and I just run a simple macro that would probably gonna run as soon as we open our workbook, that information is going to automatically come here in this expense data. This workbook is made up of just 3 sheets. We have our main data, it's all of the data here. We've got a date, the purchase from, an expense type, a receipt or a referral number or reference number. We've got an amount, and we've got the file name, and we have the row. This is not what we're going to reuse, but this might be used for the future, so I just put it there. And then we have the dashboard. So what we want to do is we want to take all that data and we want to bring it in here based on the dates that we've selected. So maybe we only want to show expenses from a certain dates, or maybe we only want a single month, so we can do that too if we want to. That's very, very simple. So the best way to do that is just with a filter, which we're going to go over. But again, the idea is to parse this data. So when let's take a look at what I want to do. What I want to do is I've got this receipt. Let's take a look at one of these receipts, okay? So inside this receipt, I want to extract the data automatically from this receipt. So how would I do that? Well, we're going to use a third party. But basically what I want to do is I want to know it's Home Depot. I want to take the receipt number. In this case, it's that 654-00016. It's that 4-digit, then 5-digit, then 5-digit number. I also want to determine the total. What was the total of this? And I want to know the date. When was this date? So I want to extract that email. And that I want to do it regardless if it's a receipt or maybe we've got a PDF. Let's take a look at another one here. I've got a utility invoice. Maybe we've got a receipt that looks like this. So regardless of the type of invoice or receipt, we've got this one here, we've got a receipt, and I've got another one here, a rent receipt, kind of different formats. So we can see here, regardless of the type, I want to get that information. I want to bring it in Excel. So the first thing we want to do is we need to parse the data. We need to have software tell us this is the date, this is the number here, this is the sum here, right? This is the total here, and we need to know where it's, what is this rent? So we need some information about that. So what we want to do is we want to have a tool that's going to help us to do that. And I've got a really, really great tool that I want to share with you, and it's free for the most part, and there's a great free, basically, there's a free version. You get a bunch. Let's take a look inside that tool, and I'll go over some of the benefits. And then that tool is called pdf.co. So you can do this. And they do have a free level, which is really cool, and we'll be able to use that free level today. And basically, they have a pricing structure. It's relatively simple, but you can get up to 5,000 credits, which could last you a long time. Maybe for a PDF, it's only 20 or 30. So if you use, let's say, they say if you use a sign up here. If we take a look at let's say sign up here. And if we sign up here, we're going to get some information here. Actually, I want to sign out, and then I want to sign up. So log out. I'm going to sign up, and I want to show you just some details that you might want to look at. Okay, so it says here, if you use your email address and get 5,000 credits instantly. Instant credits are really, really cool. I did speak with them, and I emailed them, and I let them know how much I really liked their product, and I told them I'd be making a video on this, and they said, okay, hey, cool. Here's what we're going to do. We will give you, I believe it was 125,000 credits for the first 3 people. So I said, okay, cool. You're going to give it to 3 of mine. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold a little contest. The first 3 people that comment their email below, or you don't need to put your email. I can contact you if you want, but let me know that you want the free credits from pdf.co, and then I'll make sure that the first 3 people who comment below get those 125,000 credits. So that's something they offered, and I'm happy. So basically, you want to sign up, and you use another email, you get up to 5,000 credits. If you use a regular email, you get 30 credits. But basically, I've already created an account. So let's go into that, and I'll go ahead and sign on, and then we'll get into that. And once you get signed up and signed on, you'll see a few different things. You've got API keys, some API logs, files, document parser, that's the one we're going to want to focus on, and PDF viewer. So there's a lot of features on this. They've got a lot of, but we're going to focus primarily on the document parser because that's what we want to do. We want to bring our documents in and we want to parse the data within that, and then we want that data to come into Excel. So that's the basic idea. So I'm going to click on document parser here, and once inside the document parser, then what we have here is we can click on a new template or manage our existing templates. I'm going to click new template. Okay, we can also drag and drop documents, PDF from Dropbox, so that's kind of handy. We're going to click on new template, and it's going to bring us to the screen. We've got this pop-up. It's going to let us know some information about it. So basically, I'm going to walk you through that. So no reason for me to read that to you. The first thing what I want to do is I want to load a test PDF or image. So we're going to click on this load or test, and as you see, we've got a few different ones here. going to focus on expensive. Let's go ahead into something that I'll focus on. Let's start out with one of the easy ones, which is this rent here. And then so I have an idea. Okay, so we've got this rent invoice. So we're going to load that up. Now remember, these are PDF or pictures, both will work. It's a little bit big, so I'm going to reduce it down here so we can see it all. Okay, so what do I want? Let's go back into Excel and take a look at what we actually want. I'm going to go in here in our data. First, I want the date. I know it's purchased from. I want to know the expense type. I want to know the receipt number or the reference number, the amount, and I want to know the file name. Okay, so I want to put all that. Now the file name, that's going to come from somewhere else, but at least from the form itself, I want these 5 fields. So how are we going to do that? Well, if we take a look inside our pdf.co, first thing what you want to do is run template. When it may or may not be necessary, up to you, but let's take a look at what it does to see if it finds anything. It didn't find any data. It's just going to run, but that's okay because we're going to tell it what data to find. Okay, so the first thing what we want to do is we need to get that date, right? We want that the date's the first column, so we want to add an object. Okay, and what we can do is we can add a field from, we can add a bunch of things. We can add a field mapped from a virtual grid. So if we have a grid, we can add a single field. We can add a field based on a rectangle selection, or we can add a table, right? If you've got an invoice and you got a lot of items, you can actually add all the items from that table with this type of add a table from a rectangle. That's pretty cool too. We'll show you that briefly a little bit when we get to the invoice. Then add a field based on the text search. So we can add a field. This is pretty cool. Text search, and we can add a field based on, we can add a table based on a text search and add a field with a static value. Okay, so let's click on add a field based on a text search. So what I want to do is I want to add a field here, and we're going to call it, let's call it date, okay? And then what I want to do is I want to see if we can insert a macro or want to auto detect the expression, right? We're looking for date. So if we click auto detect, maybe it's going to detect it for us. Maybe it'll find it for us. If not, no problem. But we'll go through that. Okay, see, it says smart date, right? Let's scroll down here, right? And it did find something called a smart date. So it knows that we want it, and we're going to click test the object. What I want to do is I want to see, did it find the date? And it did. It found it right here. Well, that's cool. But what if it didn't find it? What if it didn't find anything? Well, you could just enter that macro. We could tell it to look for a date. So if I clear that out, we can insert that. I want to enter a date. I want to look for the date. There's a few ways to do it, so you can try some different ways. We're going to go over them. Smart date can be found right here. If we click on that, it's going to enter the same thing we found. If we test the object and it doesn't find it, well, maybe we can find it another way, right? So what's another way to do it? Well, we can look up. I want to look for the word date. Then I want to look for maybe some empty spaces and then the date. So we can also sometimes do something like this. So I want to look for date. Then what's between the date? Well, it's probably some empty spaces. So let's insert the macro and look for something like spaces. But what do we want? Are we looking for specific number spaces? We don't really know. So maybe we'll just, it's not a single space, so maybe we'll click spaces, one or more spaces. So we can try that. And then what we're doing for is we're looking for a date, maybe another date. So we could click on, again, date again, insert macro. What are we actually looking for? We're looking for the date. Again, if we want to look at a date in a specific format, right? Or we wanted to figure it out what format. So we can click smart date there, and then we can test the object and see if it is found. And if it's not found, you know, we can try a few different options. It was found in that case, so that's good. So it's also found. Another thing that you can do is sometimes if you're not sure of the spaces or there might be some characters, we can also try something like anything. So we can insert anything. It means we don't know, there's some mixed things in there. So we can do this, insert any characters up to the next macro in the expression. So it's any characters, right? So we can do that. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back and I'm going to paste it right in here. And I'm just going to see if it also found the date with this. So I'm going to show you some different ways. And then we're going to test that object too and see if that date is also found. Okay, good. It's also found here. Okay, so we have date, but we're just going to contain with smart date. Smart date is sufficient for us. It's smart enough. I'm going to test it one more time and we're good to go on the date, right? So we know we found it. So we know it's been found. Okay, so that's the date, right? It's good there. I want to insert another one. I'm going to scroll up here. What comes next? Next up, we want to know what it's purchased from. Well, we know in this case, it's automatic. This is only for a specific receipt. So it's, I put in mean landlord on my test. So we know we purchased it from us. So we want to enter a static field. In other words, this particular template is only for the rent templates. So what we want to do is enter a static field. It means this is for rent. We're creating a template based on rent. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an object. We're going to call it add a field with a static value. So that's what we're going to have here. And we're going to call it, we can call it anything. We can call it vendor. We can call it name. In fact, just make sure you're consistent. So we'll call it purchased from in this case. So purchased from. And then we're going to scroll down and we're going to give it that specific name. I'm going to give it mean landlord. So that's it's a static. And obviously we don't have to test that one because that's automatic. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add another one. And what is the next one that we want to add? I want to add the expense type. And we know it's a rent payment. For this one, it's always going to be rent payment. So again, we can add one more static field. So add object, add field with static object. And of course, we're going to call this, I'll call this expense type. Right? And also what I want to do in this case, we're just going to call, let's see, what did I use before? I used rent payments. So we'll use that again, rent payments. We want to be consistent. Okay, so that's it for the static fields. We've got the date, purchased from, and expense type. Now what I want to do is I want to add another object. But what is coming up next? Well, now I wanted to find the receipt number or the reference number, right? I want to put that. And on this particular receipt, it's located here, 1134. So again, we're just going to click add object. Now we can do things like map from a virtual grid or add a field from a rectangle selection. Now you can pick this from a rectangle selection, but I've actually had better luck from the page all, just basically telling it what to look for from the entire page and having it find. That works pretty well. So that's what we're going to do, add a picture. So we're going to add a field based on a text search. So the first thing what I want to do is for that number field, I want to give it a name. So we're going to do receipt number. That's going to be the name. And now we have to tell it what to look for. What is it going to look for? Well, the first thing what I would do is I want to look for number, N-O. Okay, that's what I want to look for. And then there's a few spaces around it. So I'm going to type in double brackets here, spaces, because it's more than one spaces. So we can find, of course, this spaces, what I'm typing in, insert macro. And then what do I want to find? Then basically I want to find that number. And so that number, of course, can be found in here, insert macro under number, and that's what we're going to find. So I'm going to type in number. So again, here, just like that. Of course, you can add it from the macro, but we'll do it manually here, number. Okay. There, so that's it. So we're going to basically look for the entire document. We're looking for NO and period. Then we're looking for the number of spaces. And then we want to find out is the number. Okay, so we're going to test that out and see how that's look. We're going to test the object and see if it's found. And it'll take just a moment. And then we look down here, it was found. Perfect. Okay, so we have the receipt number. Now again, what I want to look for is the total, right? Where it says the sum of 1890. So again, we're going to add an object. We're going to add a field based on a text. And in this case, we're going to call this total. So I'm going to type in total here. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so we pretty much want to get it to look for the sum of. So we can do the sum of, make sure we type it in, and then probably something like anything, right? We can do, like, if we want to type in, we don't know exactly what it is, we can try that. Anything, right? Anything in the middle, right? So they have anything, any characters up to the next macro in the subscription. Anything greedy, any characters up to the next macro or to the end of the line. That's the greedy version, okay? So let's just go with anything, right? And then after that, what do we want? I want the numbers, right? So we want numbers, whatever numbers are after that. Numbers, if you're not sure which one, you can just, of course, click insert macro and then just type in numbers here. And you can find it right here, or number. It's just number, actually. So that's it. That's sufficient, not numbers. So we have that there. That should be sufficient for our purposes. Now, all we need to do is just click test objects and see if it's found. And now look, it has been found. Great. Okay, so we have all the fields we want. Now, all we need to do is give it our name. We click save template, right? And it's going to give it a save. And we also give our template a name, right? Let's do this. So let's just do test, right? And we click save template. So now we've got a name. Now I've done just that with them, but let's look for another template. Now what I'm going to do is I want another template. So I'm going to basically save and return. Okay, we did this test where we've got tests. And now what I want to do is I want to create a new template because I've got a few tests there. And now I want to see what it's like on another receipt. Just want to show you one different thing. I want to load in now this Home Depot receipt because it has some unique characteristics that I wanted to show you. So there's many things that are the same, but we'll take a look at this receipt number. I want you to zero in on this. So we've got a total here, we've got a receipt number, we've got a date, and again, what you can do is run the template and see if anything is found on here. Sometimes some things are found. In this case, nothing was found, but that's okay. We can do that. So again, what we want to do is we want to add the date. So we're going to add a field based on a text search, right? But we don't know what date, so we can look basically based on a smart date, right? So we can do that. So we'll just enter date here, in this case, date here, right? And what do we want? So we want, in this case, we don't need an expression here. We can get rid of that. And we want to look in date. Actually, we can remove that. So what do we want to add here? Well, what I want to add here is basically a field based on a text search. So that's what I want here. So field based on a text search. So we'll call it date. So again, let's see if it finds the date. We're going to insert the smart date, insert macro, date, right? Scroll to the bottom here, look for smart date and click on it and see if it's finding the date. Insert the macro, that's enough for now. And then what we'll do is we'll test the object, right? You can also do auto detect, which can auto detect it. We'll take a look. We're looking for this July 6th of 2010 date. That's the one I'm looking for. I want to see if it's found. Does it find it? And it did find it. Okay, perfect. But what's next? Of course, we know that we've got a next field. I've shown you this, purchase from an expense type. We got that, but I want to show you the unique characteristics of this one before we move on. So it's the receipt and the referred field. This particular field has something unique that I wanted to bring to your attention. If we take a look at this receipt number, and I looked at all the receipts, they all start out with 4-digit numbers. Then there's some spaces, 1 or 2 spaces. Then there's a 5-digit number. Then there's more spaces. Then there's another 5-digit number. So I need to locate that receipt number. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to add an object, and then we're going to add a field based on a text search. And then I'm going to call this receipt number here. And then what I want to do is I want to give it a specific expression. I want to say, what are we looking for? We're looking at 4 digits. Then we're looking at some spaces, then 5 digits, then some spaces, then 5 digits. So how do we do that? Well, we insert the macro here, and I'm going to look for that 4 digits number. So I'm looking for 4 digits. Then what's after that? Some spaces. I don't know if it's really 1 or 2 spaces, so I'm just going to put in spaces here, 1 or more spaces. What am I looking for after that? Then I'm looking for the 5-digit number, 5 digits. Then what I'm looking at, again, we're going to add some spaces, right? We don't know how many digits, and there's one more 5-digit space. So I'm going to put in spaces, and then I want to find another 5 digits. So just enter another 5 digits. Okay, so again, let's take a look at that. We've got 4 digits. We've got spaces. We've got 5 digits, we've got spaces, we've got 5 digits. And now what we're going to do is we're going to test to see if it finds that number, that's the receipt number that I'm looking for, based on that formula. So it'll go through that and it'll tell us if it's been found. It's looking through the entire receipt to find that pattern. If that pattern's found, it's going to tell us. Okay, and here it is. That pattern has been found, 7076000005 and then 6085. Perfect. So we can use that pattern. Okay, great. So let's take a look. So now you understand the ideas of how to get these templates. So how to create these templates, give them names. And that's just what I have here. I'm going to pull that back. I'm going to discard and return this one. And we're just going to delete. I want to delete the 2 tests. We can delete a template here. And I'm going to delete this template. And I've got basically 3 templates, and they're all based on some different tests that I've been doing. So let's just take a look at the ones. I've got 3 of them here. And then based on the 3 receipts here, rent, utilities, and Home Depot. Those are the 3 receipt types we're working. So we're going to take a look just inside each one of them. And basically all we're going to need to do is just, we have the date, a purchase from, which is fixed, and we have a expense type and receipt and the total. So that's what I've done for you. If I were to load it in, you'd find it out. So if I reload in, let's say the receipt number here, let's do that receipt number here, and we're going to see that it will load it in here. So that's all we need to do. If we run that template, it's going to find everything else. So let's zoom out this way here. Okay, there. So now just to check, if you want to load in a few different templates and double check to make sure that it is running, all you need to do is just click run the template, or you can load additional ones like I've got. We saw that one already here. Let's do June and click open, right? So basically the same thing here, just load in your templates, and then we want to check for the data. So you might want to try this with 1 or 2 receipts to make sure that the data is here. So let's take a look at this data that's been found. If we scroll down here, we see the date 6/1, mean landlord, those are static. 1034 is the receipt number, that's correct. 1890 is the amount, that is correct. Okay, so we know that that's correct, so we got that. So we've got the same thing from the Home Depot. I'm going to open the visual editor here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull in a Home Depot receipt like this one here and click open, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to click, once it gets loaded, I'm going to run this template here. And so I've created these 3 templates, and each template has a name and it also has a unique ID number. Okay, so now we're understanding how to extract the data here. It's running the template. But next up, what I want to do is I want to know how are we going to get it into Excel. So let's take a look at this. The results again here. We've got the number, we've got the total, we've got the right date. Everything looks just the way it is. Okay, so the same thing with the last one, which we'll not go over. Okay, so we understand how to create these templates. That's the most important thing. And let's take a look inside these templates. We've got 3 different templates. Each template has a name and each template has an ID. Keep an eye on this ID. The rent test 1655, the utilities test 1653, and the Home Depot 1649. So we understand how to create these templates, how to parse the data, and how to extract the data, but we really don't understand how we are going to get these receipts, get into this, right? We don't want to manually upload these things, right? Every time we have a receipt, we're certainly not going to go through this and extract the data. What we need is some automation, right? What I want is I want to put that receipt in a folder, and I want that data to come to Excel. It's that simple. That's what I want. I want to put that receipt in a folder, and I want all the data to come into Excel. I don't want to do anything else. I'm really lazy, and that's what I want to happen. So how are we going to do that? Well, we use automation to do that, right? When we talk about automation, nothing is better than Integromat. We've used it before, and it's going to help us out tremendously because Integromat can tie everything together and do that. Integromat combined with these third-party APIs and applications combined with Excel is extremely powerful. We've used it before. We're going to use it again today, and that's Integromat. It's this one right here. And basically, if you don't have Integromat, you might want to get signed up. Let's pull that up there so you can see it. If you don't, you may want to get signed up. You can have up to 1,000 automations per month. So it's really cool, and that's for absolutely free. Integromat. I'm going to include the link down below. Go ahead and click the link down below. They'll get you set up with some extra free automations if it's coming from me, and that's going to help you out. All right, so take a look at this Integromat. You've got it. Once you get signed up, it's free. You'll get into a dashboard like this. If you have any scenarios, and scenarios are basically these automations that we're going to, and I've already created some, and I'm going to walk you through that, and we're going to create one that is automatically. So how are we going to do that? We're going to call it picture. These are the 3 that I've created for tests and basically what we're going to do. So how would we do it from the beginning? Because that's what I want to show you. So we're going to click create a new scenario. And basically what do we want to happen? Well, the first thing what we want to happen is remember when we put a file in a folder, that's the start, right? That's the action start. When I take a file from here and I drop it in one of these folders, I want something to happen, okay? So, and also remember from our phone, right, from your phone, you can have Dropbox on your phone. You can take a picture of a receipt. You can save it to that folder. It's going to be exactly the same action as you would be dragging and dropping, right? So it's the same action. So that's what I want. When we make a change, when there's a brand new file in that folder, that's when I want the automation to start. So let's start it right from the beginning. We're going to click on that. We're going to look for Dropbox. It's Dropbox that we're going to be using. So click on the Dropbox, and it's going to ask you to connect your account. So you'll get this pop-up. It's going to connect your account once you have a Dropbox account. So you get that connected up. And basically what I want to do is we have to have that trigger. What is that trigger? We're going to watch these files. That's a trigger. Triggers when a file is added to a folder being watched. That's what I want, right? I want that. That's the trigger we're going to use. Okay, so we're going to start out with that. What is the folder? Here's where you're going to click add your account. You're going to click here. You're going to create an account. It's going to give you a pop-up, right? It's going to say, what do you want your account? Like, it does something like this. Continue. You're going to get this pop-up, but I've already done it already, so there's no reason to go into that. So we can cancel. I've already got it right here. You've got multiple Dropbox. So I want to choose a folder. What folder am I going to choose? Well, I've got a dedicated folder called expenses. So I'm just going to go down here for that folder. It's called expenses, okay? But not any folder, right? I want to create an automation for a specific. I've got 3 different folders. Let's focus on that Home Depot, right? Clicking on Home Depot, when I make a change to that folder, that's what I want. I want to set a limit. I only want 1 file at a time. So that's going to trigger it. That's the first thing what we want to do. Okay, so we're going to move that over to the left and then just going to click OK. Now, what do we want it from now on? Yeah, I don't want it to do it in the past. You might want to do all specific folder, all the files in the folder if you have a lot of them, right? Let's say you have receipts in a folder you already want to map. You can do from a specific date or you can do all, but we'll do it from now on. I'm going to click OK. Now what do I want to happen? I need to upload this file to this DocuParser, right? Basically, I need to upload it, but how am I going to upload that receipt to DocuParser? Well, I need to get a link, right? This can read a link. It can download it. What do I mean by link? Well, if I were to right click on here, right, and we see the option is we can have one called share, or we have actually called copy Dropbox link. And what that's going to do is going to provide a download link. Well, I want to do the same thing, but I want to do it inside the API. So I'm going to hit this plus and I'm going to click Dropbox. So I want to add something more. I want to create a downloadable link, and I want Dropbox to do that for us. So how are we going to do that? create or update a shared link. This is the option I want. Now we click on here. Well, first of all, how are we going to select our files? Well, it's going to be based on map a folder. What are we mapping it to? Well, it's going to come directly from this file, right? From the watch files, right? We added a file. Now what I want to do is I want to get a link based on the file that we just added. I don't want any file. I wanted the specific file that we just put in. So how do we want that? Well, so I'm going to look in that watch files and I'm going to look for something called the download link. So if I look inside here, you see that we have the option of download link. But to get that download link, we need to have the original path, right? So we're going to collect this lower path. That's going to create that lower path. This connection is going to create that link for us. So path display, that's the path of the file that we just added, okay? So now we have some information. We want it public, an expiration date, which we don't need. So we don't need the link's access level. We don't need that as well. So we're good to go. So basically we're going to take the path, that's the full path of the file that we just added. We're going to create a link from that, okay? This module is going to create that link automatically, clicking OK. So now we have the two Dropbox. We've added the file to the folder. This is going to create that downloadable link. Now what we can do is we can upload that link into our PDF called parser. So we can click on here. Now what I want to do is I want to add in that PDF, right? PDF.co. That's the bottom one here, .co. That's what I want to add. And what do I want to do? I don't want to convert into a PDF. I want to parse the PDF, right? So how are we going to, what's the difference? What are we going to use? Well, we're going to look something called your parse document. Use pre-built extraction templates, which we just created, to automatically read invoices, reports, orders, statements, and other documents. That's what I want, parsing a document. So I'm going to click here. So the first thing what we want to do is you want to add, I've already added mine, but you'll add it here. It's going to add, let's just call this test, and it's going to add for your API. You need that API. So where are we going to find that? We're going to go back into here, scrolling up, and we're going to look in API and view your API key here. And of course, I can regenerate this, so I don't care if you see my API key. I'm just going to copy this here. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to paste it directly in here. I'm going to click continue. So that's going to create a test. So that automatically added it. We'll go back to the original one. Okay, they're both the same now. So then what do I want to do? I want to input, I want to upload a file, I want to import a file from a URL. We're importing a file, right? This is generating that URL. What is that URL? Now remember, we're looking for this module which created a short link. This is where we're going to find that download link. That download link is going to come directly from looking for something called download URL. This one right here, click download URL. So that's going to upload it, okay? Template ID. Now, what is the template ID? Remember, we're in Home Depot, right? We're watching that Home Depot file. So we need to find that Home Depot one. So that Home Depot template ID is 1649, That's the template ID that I want to put in right here, 1649, okay? I want to put the output as a JSON format. That's what we want, JSON, however you pronounce it. Profiles, we don't need to adjust a specific profile. We want a JSON output. That's perfect. Okay, good. So we've got that, clicking OK. So now all that's going to do, so what do I want to do now? I want to bring it back into a data file, right? So the first thing what I want to do is I want to go back into Dropbox. This is going to take care of the parsing for us. But what I want to do now is I want to get that data and I want to put it in a TXT file. I want to get the data and I want to put it in a TXT file and I want it to look something like this. So I wanted to make it very, very clear. So I want the date, easy to read by Excel. I want it separated by an asterisk. Then I want to have the vendor or the information, the name, right? Then I want to have, in this case, the type, the expense type. Then I want to have, in this case, the reference number or receipt number. Then I want to have the amount. Then I want to put the file name, right? It's the same exact order as we see on here. The date, the purchase from, expense, everything in this exact order, because then it's going to be very easy to put it inside Excel. So I want all that information and I want to bring that into a TXT file. So I want that TXT file, I want that to be created by Dropbox and I want to bring it all in here. So we see we have a few in here. That's what I want. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can do that again with creating a TXT file. So let's click on Dropbox here. And this time I want to upload a file. And I want to choose the folder. Where do I want that to go? It'll connect to your Dropbox. It's already connected, right? We're going to select again expenses here. And then I want to put it in a specific folder called expense data. So I'm going to select on that. And I don't want the entire document. I want to map a source folder, right? So what do I want to call it? Well, I want to give it that name. I'm going to use this name here. And I want to make sure it is in a txt format. So I'm going to do txt. What kind of data do I want in here? Well, the data, again, is going to match that map. Date, purchase from, expense type, all of those fields. So let's put that inside there, and let's get that data in there, and then we'll put a delimiter in there. So if we want to find the data, once you've run the scenario once, it should appear here. It should appear here once we've run it at least once. So you may want to run this scenario by making a change by simply putting a file in that folder. We'll make that change, and it's going to go ahead and get that date. So the first thing what I want to do is look into objects. This might be close, so look in objects value, and then we're going to click on date. And I want that date, but I want to separate it. I'm going to separate it with an asterisk. And the next field that I want to put in, if we take a look at this, we want to put purchase from and then expense type. So that's just what we're going to do. We're going to put inside the value here, we're going to put in purchased from, then we're going to separate it. We'll scroll down here a little, separate that by an asterisk, and then we're going to put in expense type. Okay, then right after that, we've got a few more fields to put in. We also want to put in our receipt or reference number and then the amount. So we're going to put those in right there. So then we're going to put in here, if we see in the values, receipt number here, another asterisk, then the total, that's our amount. Then what else do we want to put in? Then I want to put in one more field. I want to put in the name of that file. Where are we going to get that name of the file? Well, that's going to come inside Dropbox. So we can put that in here. It is right here. If we take a look inside, we want this. It's called this name here. That's the one we want. Or we can use a Dropbox. Let's take a look at this. Dropbox home. I want to put the name of that file because we're going to need to put it in. So there, that's the Dropbox name. It's that original name of that JPG file, that picture file. I want to put that picture file right in here. For example, here, putting that name is going to come, that's going to come from Dropbox. It'll come from Dropbox right here. To upload a link, it's also available here in the folder here, so it's also available in the watch files too, but we've got the data available right here in name, okay? So that's it. So I'm going to click OK. All right, good. So now what I've done, but what I also want to do one more thing. Once I put that information in expense date, I want it to come in a JSON.txt document. I also want to do one thing. I want to take whatever that receipt is here, that receipt, and we've already run it. I want to take it and I want to place it directly in our archived receipts right here in archive receipts. So how do we do that? Well, we can do that with one more little component here on Dropbox. So we're going to click here, Dropbox, and this time what we're going to do is we're going to move a file. So we look, move a file or folder. So what do we want to move? Well, I want to map it, right? So what is that original file? Where do I want to do it? It's that original file name, and we can scroll down and we find it, right? We look and we're uploading a file, or are we going to use our creator share link? So we've got different Dropbox, or we're going to watch files. What we want to do is we want to pull in this file, creator update. Where is that original file located? Well, I'm looking for that original file, right? That's where we have the watch files, right? Watch files. It is this right here, right? We want that path, that lower path. That's our path. That lower path is over that original location. And where do we want to place it? We're going to click on here. And again, I want to put it inside the expenses, and I want to put it in my archived receipts. So I'm going to click here. I want to put it in archive receipts. And I don't necessarily need to give it a new name, but I do want to make sure that we're going to auto rename. If it's a duplicate, I want to auto rename it. I'm going to click OK. All right, great. So that's it. So again, let's review. We're going to watch files in a specific folder. If there's files that are changed, we're going to upload it. We're going to create a shared link for that folder. We're going to use that shared link in our PDF. We're going to parse that document, right? Just as based on our template of 1649, right? We're going to put it in a JSON format. I also want to put it there. And also I just added, wanted to generate CSV headers false. Generate CSV. This may helpful. It's worked both ways, with and without, but I want to put this in there, bring this to your attention that I had a few issues, so this could be helpful. Generate CSV headers false. We don't need the headers in there. Don't need those. I just need the data. So basically we don't want the CSV headers, and then the JSON output. Okay, we're going to take that information, we're going to bring it inside here, and we're going to bring it into a TXT file, creating a brand new file. And what we want, the contents of that file, we want something like this: the date, purchase from, expense type, the receipt number, the total, and the name, all separated by asterisks. And click OK. And then Dropbox. Then we have Dropbox. We're going to simply move that receipt to an archive folder, because that folder where we want all the receipts to go to. We're going to save our work. We're going to turn this scenario on, make sure it's on. Now it's ready for go, okay? So now what we need to do is, all we need to do is drag and drop a specific file into that. So we go to our expenses here, and let's see, they're already located. I'm just going to bring them out of my, put them in my expenses, and then I'm going to bring it directly in. And I'm going to make sure that we have no data, so there's nothing else in here. I'm going to clear out all the data here, deleting that data, and now I'm just going to take one simple receipt and I'm going to bring it directly inside Home Depot. Okay, great. Now if we take a look inside expense data and take a look inside our expense data here, we see we've got that inside a TXT file. If we double click on that and we take a look inside, we've got the date, we've got the name, we've got the expense type, we have our receipt number here, we've got the amount, and we've got the picture file. And we'll take a look inside here in the expenses file. Now in our archive receipts, we should have that Home Depot, and here it is right here. It's been now moved to our archive receipts, so everything we're good. If you want to see inside our diagram, here's the history of it. We take a look at the history. We can see all the information. We click on the details here, and we see that everything went through here. So we can see the information here. We have initial operation, and we can go through every step and see exactly what happened here. Everything got generated, and we have the information that got brought in here. So everything happened. All right, looking good. Okay, so now we know exactly, and basically all we need to do is create a different scenario for each one of these. Now, you like this, but you got to create it all again for each one. Well, it's really easy. All you need to do is click Options and then clone it. Once you clone it, you can create. All you need to do is change a few things. All you need to do in the clone one, of course, change the folder here. And then all you need to do again is change the document parser template here. So remember, you've got different ones here. Let's take it here. We've got 1653 for whatever you want. Just change the ID. That's all you need to do. Oh, and one other thing, and make sure you change the name. I've updated, I created a name here. Change the name here. So then in your scenarios, you've got 3 different ones, and that's all I did. So you would do that for each one of your receipts, and you only need to do it once. So when you look here in the folder I've got here, this was just a test that we did, so we can remove this. And then, all right, there was an error, so I fixed that. That's it. If there's an error, it'll tell you here. Now everything's fixed. I just had to duplicate. One of the errors that I had, so let me just go through that. I want to edit this. One of the errors I had a duplicate receipt number, so I want to make sure that when we create those here, show advanced settings, make sure you auto rename it, because it'll tell you what the problem was, though. It'll always tell you if there's a receipt. So make sure, and then save any of your changes. So we just want to make sure that we're always, in case there is a duplicate, because I'm using the same receipts over and over and over again, so that's part of the problem why. Okay, great. So we've got that. So now we know how to create scenarios. We know how to parse our documents. We know how to get it into the folder, but once we get this data here, how do we get it into Excel? Okay, well, that's what I'm going to go over right now. Okay, so inside Excel here, so basically what I want to do is every time there's a new data in the folder, I want to add a brand new row here. So we're going to go over the macro that just does exactly that. Okay, so inside our dashboard here, we've got a dashboard expense data here, and inside our VBA, of course, developer and Visual Basic or Alt F11 will get you there. And I've just got 3 macros. It's relatively simple. So one's going to be called the module called expense data and macros. Okay, and expense check and add. Okay, expense check and add. That's the macro that we're going to run through. So we need to know the expense row. We're going to put that into a variable long. I'm also going to loop through all the columns. So I'm going to loop through column 1 all the way to the last column, right? So we need to keep track of what column we're on. So we need that in a long variable. And I want to know how many expenses have been added. So I'm going to keep track of those. I need to know the data file path. What is the file path and the folder where the data is? And I also want to know the archive path, right? Because once I get through with a receipt, right? Once I'm done, I want to put all those inside our archive data. I want to have it here, that data. So in case we need to go back, we can refer back to the data. So all that data is going to go in here. Okay, so I want to put it there. And how are we going to know what folder goes where? Well, we've got it here. We've got our expenses data, where our expenses are going to go. We have our archive data, and we have our receipt archive folder. So we're going to do that. So we've also got all these in a string variable. And also we're going to need an array. We're going to need to loop through all the expenses in that txt file. So we need to use an array to create that. And we have expense data as a string. Okay, we need to found expense. We don't need that found. That one we don't need. So data folder, that's going to be our admin D3. We need to get that into a variable. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Inside D3, I need to know where we're going to get those expenses from. Where's it going to come from? I've got to know the folder path of this file, this expense data, and we just taken this folder path here, and all I've done is place it directly inside D3. So we're going to place that inside a variable called data folder. Okay, I'm also going to add a backslash on the end of that. That's very important. I want to check that to make sure it exists. So to do that, we need to check on that. And so we need to just make sure that it exists, make sure that it's an accurate folder. To do that, all we're going to do is just if the directory of the data folder, VB directory, if it equals blank, or if the data folder itself is blank, then we need to let the user know with a message box, please select the correct Dropbox folder for the expense data folder. We're going to do the exact same thing for the archive, but this case it's located in D4, adding that backslash, and just double checking to make sure that that is correct using VB directory. If not, letting the user know and exiting the sub. Okay, assuming that our folder structures are correct, what I want to do is I want to basically loop through all the files in the folder. And to do that, all we need to do is just get the file name. What is the file name? Well, basically what I want to know is any single file in that specific folder that ends in .txt. So to do that, it's going to be file name is going to be the directory of the data folder and *.txt. That means for any file that ends in .txt, any file that ends in, and we're going to do something called do while. We're going to run a loop called do while. And we're going to do while the length of the file name is greater than 0. As soon as it's not, we can stop the loop. Okay, so the first thing what I want to do is I want to get that full path of that file. That full path, we're going to need to open it in a txt file. So the data file path is going to be the data folder and the file name, right? This is only the file name here, just the file name itself. So when I combine the folder and the file name, I get a full file path. And I want to open that file as a txt. Now this happens very, very fast. You don't even see it, right? Open the data file for input as number 1. Okay, we just want it, and then what we want line input 1 expense data. So basically everything on that line I'm going to put inside a variable, string variable called expense data. That's all I want to do is take all the contents of that txt file right here, taking all of that and basically putting it into a string variable. What I'm going to do then now is I'm going to split it based on this asterisk. This is going to be our delimiter. It's going to help me separate the data so that I can put that individual data in the cells. So we're going to do that. We're going to create an array. I'm going to put that split data in an expense array. We're splitting that data. Here's the string based on that delimiter, that asterisk, okay? Now, once we have it, then what I want to do is I want to determine what row are we going to place it. I want the first available row based on the expense database. The first available row is the last row with data plus 1. That's the first available row, first available row. Once we have that, we're going to run a loop from column 1 to 6. Why are we running a loop from one column? Starting in column 1, I want to go all the way to column 6 equals column. This is column 6. Okay, so I want to run. So basically, we're going to run a loop and we're going to place that data in here. And the last thing is I want, just in case, I'm going to put that row, although we're not using it in this specific training, I want to put a formula row in the last one. That could help us. And the reason is once we go here, we might want to make changes. If we want to make an update, we could do that if we have the row. So that's why I added it just for the future. So, or perhaps I'll do that in our Patreon account. If we want to make a change to here, how could we make a change and save those changes? So that's something good for Patreon. If you'd like to see that, I'll put that in our Patreon. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to loop through that. Now all we have is we have our columns 1 through 6. We have our row, it's based on there. So dot cells, because we're already in expense database, equals what? Expense array and the expense column minus 1. Why are we subtracting 1? When it comes to an array, the first value is 0. So it's going to be, in this case, expense array 0. So the first value, that date value is 0. So expense column, if our first column is 1, minus 1 is 0. So our first value inside an array is always on 0. So we're going to add that date. We're going to loop through every single based on that delimiter. So first is going to be date, then 2 are going to be our vendor name, then purchase from, then our expense type here, then we're going to have our receipt number, then our value, then our picture. We're going to put all that inside there. Once it's done, once we've added all that data, last thing I want to, in column G, I want to add that row formula. You saw that row formula in column G. I want to add that. Okay, that's that's it. So all we need to do is clear out that file name by using directory file name, right? That clears out the current file name. And then all I want to do is then I want to copy that file. In other words, I want to copy, you can copy that file here. If we uncomment that out, it's going to copy that to the data file path. I want to copy that, take that receipt and copy there. But now we're using Excel. But now we don't need to do this step because why? Because actually 𝐷𝐷 is doing it for us, right? We're copying, 𝐷𝐷 takes that file. We can get rid of that, right? I'll keep it there, but I'll comment it out. But there were some issues, but we don't need to copy it. Why don't we need to copy it? Because we're doing it right here. I'm already taking the receipt in this step and I'm moving it over to the receipt file. So we don't need to have VBA do it for us, because 𝐷𝐷 is going to be doing that. Okay, I'm going to run that count. I want to keep a count of all of the expenses that we're adding. So this variable expense will do that. And we're just going to kill. That's why we can delete that file, because 𝐷𝐷's already moved it over for us. So that's it. Now we just run that loop. And then what I want to do is I want to run a macro to refresh the dashboard. And basically that macro, which I'll go over, is simply going to refresh all the data. Great. So now that I have that, now we understand how to add that up. Now what we would do is we want to take this macro here, copy that, and I want to run that on a workbook open event. When the workbook opens, I want to run it. So I click on here on workbook and I want to click open, and I'm just going to paste that here. I'm going to comment it out because when you get this file, I don't want it to run it, but this is the macro that's simply going to run when the workbook opens. So that means any new expenses are automatically. Of course, we can also add it to a button here on our screen. We could just say refresh data. We could add it anywhere on here into a button. So that would not be a problem here. So we could do something like this, insert shapes here, insert shapes, and we could do something like check for new data, check for new expenses, something like that, new expenses. And we'll give it something a little bit closer to our theme color here under the format, and we're using this theme here, and I'll do something like this, okay? That's going to be better here, and then we can make it a little bit bigger and bolder here. So let's take a look inside here, and then I'll bold it, make it center, bring this down a little bit while I'm formatting. Okay, so, and then I'll up. So we're going to check for new expenses. There we go. That's nice. And then, so what we do is just right click in here, and then I'll right click here and then assign that macro here. And then just going to assign that macro, only 3 macros in this workbook. And then expenses, check and add, click OK. So now whenever we do that, it's simply going to check and automatically 3 expenses have been added. Perfect. So it works great. And then they're automatically added. Okay, very, very good. I like that. Now we can change the date. So now we've got just 2 other macros that I wanted to go over with you. We've got some little bit of data here, so very cool. And we got some named ranges to make this really work. And I want to be able to show you how we're going to show these receipts too. That's what I'm going to go over now. Let's show a little bit more data in here. I'll change it to the month 5/1, and that'll show a little bit more data in here. Okay, great. So now we know how to do that, but we also see that we loaded in that brand new data also came in here. So how are we going to bring this data over and bring it into this dashboard? We'll take a look in the macro here. Now that's under the dashboard macros here. So the first thing what I want to do is something called expenses filter and load. That is the macro that's automatically going to run when I make a change to F13 or I make a change to H13, or it's also the macro that's going to run at the end of this. Remember, that is the same macro that we run here called expenses filter and load when we just had that macro. So that macro is a relatively simple macro. So the first thing what I want to do is that macro is going to basically bring all the over data, but it's going to be based on these dates, all the expenses between these 2 dates. So we're going to run that through an advanced filter. That advanced filter is going to be right here. That's the criteria for that. So basically what I'm going to do is I want it greater than or equal, in fact, the dashboard F13. In fact, I created some named ranges which we can use. If we take a look at this, click on here, we see that's the from date. If we take a look at here, we see that's the to date. So we can also add those in just like this, and from date, right? Just from date, just like that. Or, and then enter, and or to date. Now we want to see those numbers. We don't necessarily want to see a date on that because the numbers are better because any format will work regardless of what your date format is. So we want to see those numbers. So it's going to be greater than or equal to from date and less than or equal to to date. That's the criteria that we're going to be running this through. We're going to determine the last row of the data here, in this case 43. We're going to run it through our criteria here. We're going to have those results appear here. Once the results appear, I want to bring in all those data. and I want to put it in right here. And I also have it in a hidden column. Notice there, I do have the row numbers here. If I were to change the font color on these, we can see that we also have the row. This could help us. If I want to make a change, I know automatically what row to place it in. So great. So we have all that. That's good. No receipts there to put in. So how do we do that? So let's take a look at the macro. It's very simple. So first thing what I want to do is I want to clear the contents, clear in B4 to D16. Why B4? B4 is our selected row. When I select a row, we're going to use conditional formatting, and B4 is going to keep track of that, and it's going to be right here in 19. So notice when I check on that, selection change event is going to change that. So I want to clear out the selected row, and I also want to clear out all the data all the way from D16 all the way through J and all the way down. So that's what you're going to D16 through J and all the way down. Okay, so determine the last row based on our expense data. The last row, we're going to get that into a variable. If it is less than 3, we're going to certainly exit out of that sub. And then, of course, I want to delete the criteria. Why do I want to do that? Well, I want to make sure that I also want to get those unique cells. So not only do I want to do that, but I also want to get the unique expense types. Based on all the expense types here, I want to get the unique. That's going to be super helpful because I want to create a graph, this graph here, based on those expense types. To do that, I want the unique expense type. So not only do I want to get that data, I want to get unique ones. But when we get unique, we're not using any criteria. All I'm going to do is take all these expense types and get the unique ones through an advanced filter. But that won't be just the unique values, but it won't contain a criteria. So to make sure that we don't have any issues on that, because there already is a criteria created on this sheet here, I want to delete the criteria if it exists. If it doesn't exist, it would create an error. Therefore, I'm wrapping it in on error, resume next, and on error, go to 0. So we're going to delete that criteria. I'm going to run an advanced filter. Notice only on column C, only on that expense type, starting in C2 and all the way down. So C2 through C in the last row. Advanced filter, there's no criteria here. Copying it to range K2. What that's going to do is going to give me some results. K2 is going to be only the list of 4 unique expense types. Those expense types are very helpful coming up a little bit later on. Once I have that, I'm ready to run my main advanced filter. That is the advanced filter that's going to get us these results based on the criteria here. So again, this time I'm going to go all the way through G, and our criteria is going to be M2 through N3. So all the way through G based on, make sure you include your header row too. Our criteria M2 through M3. We want those results to come in P2 through V2. P2 here all the way through V. Then once I got the results here, I'm going to get the last row based on what's column P. If it's less than 3, then we're going to exit out. But as soon as we have data, all I need to do is just bring all this data over and bring it directly inside here, starting in D16. So that's just what I do with the rest of the macro. So determining the last row based on column P. If it's less than 3, exit the sub. And then all we're going to do is bring in D16 through J in the last row plus 13. Why is that important? Because our original data starts on row 16 here, while our original data here starts on row 3. So we need to compensate 13 rows to make up the difference. So now that we're bringing the data inside here, I now have the ability to bring it all the way over. That's it. So that one single macro does all of that. Okay, very, very good. Next up, I want to display the picture, right? Let's take a look at that. If I display this picture, I want to display a picture. Let's bring this back up here. I want to display the picture of the receipt. And even if it is a PDF, I want to display it. So how can we do that? Well, very cool. With just this one little macro is going to do that. First thing I want to do is I want to take that file name, put it in a string, and I want to put the receipts folder in a string and the picture path, right? What I simply need to do is I know where those receipts are, they're located here in this folder. And if I know the folder and I know the name of the receipt, the name is located in column I, if I combine the folder, combine the name, then I know the correct file path of that picture. So we're going to need that. And I also want to know the file type. Is it a picture or is it a PDF? Because we need to do something a little bit different if it is. We're going to focus on the dashboard. Okay. What I want to do is if I'm bringing a new one in, when I select something, that's when I want this macro to run. When do I want this macro, display receipt picture, to run? I want it to run when I select something within a table. So we go into the dashboard. Here, selection change. This is what I want. If the user makes a selection anywhere from D16 through I99 and D in the target row doesn't equal empty, right? I want to make sure that there's actually a value here, right? If they select on here, nothing's going to happen. So I want to do two things. I want to take whatever row they've selected. I'm going to put it in B4. Next thing what I want to do is I want to make sure that we run that macro. So B4 is equals to the target row. And then we're going to run this macro. It is that macro that we're going to go over right now. Okay, so inside that macro here, we're going to delete the picture. If there's an existing picture, it's always going to be called RECPIC, receipt picture. We're going to delete it. If it doesn't exist, it would create an error. So we want to wrap that around, okay? And I want to get that folder into a variable located in D5. Remember, that's on the admin screen, okay? That folder doesn't contain a backslash, so I want to make sure to add it inside our string. Then all I need to do is simply combine it. I do want to check to make sure that that folder is an accurate path, and we can do that using VB directory, or if it's empty, we're just going to make sure that there's a proper, correct receipt folder in the archive admin screen, okay? And then exit out. Okay, if B4 value, B4 is our row, B4 is very important. If there's nothing here, we need to know why is B4 value, because I need to pull that picture name. That picture name is going to come from I and whatever is in B4, I18 in this case. So we will need to make sure if B4 is empty, then we can exit out of the sub. The expense row is located in B4. And the file name is located I and the expense row. That's the file name. So now we have the file name, right? So all we need to do is combine the file name and the receipt folder for the full file path. But I want to know inside that file name, does it contain .pdf? Because if it contains .pdf, I want to display the PDF, right? I want to display a thumbnail. I freeze those columns. Let me unfreeze those because it's a little bit hard so you can see, but you can do that and you want. Okay, so let's just unfreeze those, and now we can scroll up a little bit easier first. But either way, so what I want to do is I want to show those PDF or pictures. So I need to know, does this file name contains .pdf? So we can use the inString command to check for that. If inString of the file name .pdf is greater than 0, that means the file type is equal to PDF. Otherwise, the file type is picture. Now I can combine those two, the folder and the name. Of course, we can put this to file name because we already did put that inside a variable here, file name. Okay, that's the full picture path there. Okay, we have that there. And now once we have that, we want to make sure that it is accurate. Again, we're going to use the VB directory. If the directory is picture path, VB directory, or the picture path equals empty, then exit the sub. If the file type equals picture, then do this, right? We've already set the file type of this. If the file, then what I want to do is I want to insert a picture. .pictures insert based on that picture path. Name is going to give it the name. But what if it's a PDF? On PDF, I want to do something slightly different. OLE objects dot add file name equals picture path. So basically we're adding an object. We don't want to link to that object. I don't want to display it as an icon. I want to display it as a full picture, and I want to give it the name. Now that name is going to be exactly the same as the name that I had given it if it was a picture. That makes it very easy when we need to delete it because we know the name, okay? So that PDF is going to have the same picture. Everything else is exactly the same regardless if it is a picture or PDF. With the shapes receipt picture, the width, we're giving it a width of 250. I want to place it to the left. Basically, I will need to call out that sheet name again because we're inside the width here. J and the expense row plus left plus 10, right? Just a little bit over on the right of that, of column J. And then also top dashboard, this could be J or I, wouldn't matter. J and the expense row dot top. So I want to put it on the top of whatever the row they've selected right here. Great, that's all we need to do. Very, very easy. That's all we need to do is simply display that picture right here. Super simple. Okay, fantastic. So those are only the 3 macros. Everything else is pretty much in the dashboard. Let's just go over some of these real cool dashboards. So basically, what I want to know is I want to know some totals. Well, the best way to use totals, we create some named ranges. So inside the formula, I've done just that. Let's select out of that, and then formulas, and then name manager, and take a look at some of the here. I've got expense amount using the offset formula, using all the expense amount. It's an offset formula. Dynamic means it's going to grow as the data grows in the offset. The expense date here, okay, here, that's based on the expense date. I've got the expense type here, right here. And that's pretty much it. That's all we needed, those three for the formulas, right? We have an expense list, expense type data, a few other things, but basically that's it for now. Okay, so we have those three. So now what I want to do is I've created a month. We've got a list of months here. I want to create this particular graph. So to do that, we need to get some information in. And I want to base it on using SUMIF. So I want to get all of the summits based on if it is inside this date or not, right? I want to know how much for January. So how do I know how the totals are for January? We can use SUMIF, so that we're going to use the expense amount because that's the amount that we're summing. We're going to use the expense date, right? We've just created that. Must be greater than or equal to the year of the from date, right? Remember that from date. The row, this is the row. Then I need the month, right? We're using the date, right? So the first thing is the year. The second thing is the month here. So how do I know the month of January? Well, it's based on the row 8, minus 1, right? So that way I can simply copy down this formula. It makes it a lot easier. So the row 8 currently minus 7 is equal to 1. And then I want the first day row. So it has to be greater than or equal to January 1st in this case. And also I want this expense date less than or equal to the last day of the month of January. To get that, we're going to use the end of month feature. So in this case, EO month, end of month, again, with the same date, the same year, the same month, and the same date. But this time we're using EO month. I want the end of the month. And then 0 means that that's exact month, not the month before or not the month after. So that is going to get us the totals for January. If I copy that formula down just like this, it's going to be actually for all the months. Very simple. Now I've created just a simple bar chart here. And when I want to select the data and click select data, right? And we click edit, we see that the series here, the dashboard values are based on the amounts of those. Okay, it's simply just based on the amounts. And also we have the edit when we want the months, we have based on the months here. And that's our access labels. And then all I've done is just give it some colors and looks. We won't go over in too detail. Okay, great. So we understand basically for the most part how to create. It is simple, it's not complex. Now we got a little bit of a pie chart here, just something basic. And here what I've done is I've created basically a link to the unique. Now I've created this, notice that this is a link to K3. If we look back on the expense data, we see it's a link to K3. So as our unique expense types are built all the way down here, so is our links here. And now what I've created a formula. Now what I want to do is I want to create a formula based on those dates, but based on only this specific expense. To do that, again, we're going to be using the SUMIFs. We're summing the amounts. The expense type is going to be equal to A21, okay, basically the left. The expense date must be greater than or equal to from date, and the expense date must be less than or equal to to date. That's going to get us all of the expenses based on this. So I'm just going to bring that forward here, bringing it all the way down, and all I need to do is just bring this down. Then all I've done is just created a simple pie chart based on that. So when we could select data, we see and we edit the series here, we see that it's based on the values of B21 to B23. Actually, just create that. I'll create that more. Obviously, we need to go down further, but we can create, you know, as much as we want. We'll just do a simple, just for our purposes now, I'll just do 30. Okay. And we just simply that. But basically what we want to do, if we don't want to see this, all we need to do is just create, we can use a named range too. That's another way to do it, okay? So keep that in mind that if we want to do that, we want to edit it, we can do that based on that named range. So let's take a look inside that named range here. And then we enter the formulas and let's get out of that cell there and then go into the formulas, name manager. And we have here inside our expense type data here, we have that data here in an offset, right? Offset dashboards 21, right? Our data is now in automatically offset, okay? So we can keep that here based on this offset. We're going to use 2 columns in this, okay? So we want to create a new one. So for example, insert a pie chart. If I want to create a pie chart here, and I want to select the data, all I need to do is just add in that data there. Select the data, and all we just need to do is paste that data in here. And then boom, where we have it right there, everything's set there. And all we need to just refresh the data. We can use VBA to do that a few other ways. That's how we get our data in here. Very, very, very cool. All right, it's been a great training. We have learned a lot this week. We have learned how to parse data in PDF and images, how to simply drag those pictures or those PDFs into a folder, automatically extract that data using parsing, and Integromat to create scenarios where we can automatically get that data into Excel and have it all brought in just a single click. It's been an incredible training. I hope you do appreciate this. All I ask from you is that if you could just simply subscribe to our channel, click the notification icon bell. That's going to help us out. Also, I've got 200 of the best workbooks for just $77. I'll include the link down below. That'll really help us out. All right, thank you much. Until next week, we'll see you again. Thanks so much.